Okay, welcome everyone to a new episode of Technique Tuesday. This week we're going to be looking at, in my opinion, one of the most underrated exercises out there for developing the yoke muscles. So the traps, glutes, lats, and even the long head of the triceps. And these four muscles are critical for developing a big muscular appearance, especially in clothes, as the glutes are going to give your lower body thickness from the side, big traps are going to make you look large up top, and the lats are going to assist with width from the rear, and the long head of the triceps is really going to help you fill out a t-shirt. And I don't think many people would think of the barbell 45-degree hyperextension as a great exercise for this, but I actually think it's one of the most underrated exercises out there for developing the entire posterior chain. And there's much more to it than first meets the eye. So of course you're going to need access to a 45-degree hyperextension machine to do these. Glute ham raises train a similar movement pattern but won't hit the upper body at all, and they tend to be more hamstrings dominant. And you could do horizontal back extensions, but they might be harder to overload with a barbell. And as you can see in this figure from Brett Contreras' Biomechanics book, there's just something special about the torque curve of the 45-degree back extension. It's harder than the good morning, the horizontal back extension, and the reverse hyper at the midpoint of the lift, and it has this very unique inverted U-shaped torque curve, and even when compared to more common hip extension exercises like the deadlift, squat, and the hip thrust, you can see that it really stands out. So while it may look simple enough, there are in fact 4 biomechanical actions we're performing here. First and foremost, hip extension, where the hips straighten out. It's going to be handled by the glutes and hamstrings. There's also a strong isometric thoracic extension contraction occurring, where the traps and spinal erectors of the upper back are forced to keep the upper back in a neutral position under the barbell's heavy load. Now, the spinal erectors of the lower back are going to contribute to lumbar extension, and both the lats and the long head of the triceps will contract to prevent the barbell from drifting out in front of you. And similar to the deadlift, here we have a relatively simple exercise where you basically pick a barbell up off the floor, but when performed correctly, can target much more musculature than meets the eye. I also think this movement is great for developing raw deadlift strength, especially if you tend to fail the lift at the mid portion of the lift, right around the knees. And although, for whatever reason, people tend to think of this movement as a beginner exercise, when loaded with the barbell, I actually tend to reserve it for trainees who have at least mastered proper deadlift mechanics first. And similar to most compound movements that target a lot of muscle mass, I like to load the 45-degree barbell hyperextension in a more moderate rep zone, around 6 to 10 reps. While you can treat this as a more mind-muscle connection-based exercise by holding a dumbbell, rounding your upper back, and focusing on squeezing your glutes at the top, that form alteration is going to completely transform the movement. And I think that in that case, using higher reps makes sense. So you want to set up the bar in front of the machine and position the device so that the top of the pads are at the crease of your hips, right about where you'd place a barbell for a hip thrust. Position your heels firmly against the foot pads and then keep them planted throughout the lift. Grip the bar with a roughly 1 to 1.5 times shoulder width grip, so a bit wider than you'd go on a deadlift. This is going to increase the range of motion while getting your upper back musculature much more involved. And before initiating the pull, you want to retract your shoulder blades and pack your lats by thinking about tucking the bar in. Then from here, you want to lift your chest up to extend your upper back as you simultaneously use your glutes to straighten out your hips. For this, you want to think about driving your hips into the pad as if doing a hip thrust as you drive your heels down. Once you reach the point where your hips are fully extended, you can reverse the motion by lowering the barbell back down under control. Now, I would say the most common error that I see on this exercise is allowing your back to round too much. Like I said earlier, a rounded back is okay if you're trying to turn the movement into a glute-only exercise. However, if you're using it as a yoke builder, you really want to focus on keeping your upper and lower back straight. Usually if people load it too heavily or get lazy on their technique, rounding will happen. Now, the exact opposite error happens when trainees allow their back to hyperextend at the top. This is common in new lifters who think of the exercise as merely a lower back exercise. Because they're told to do a full range of motion, they take that advice to the extreme and then extend as far back as they can. Remember, you want to maintain a neutral back position throughout the range of motion, and it should be your glutes and hamstrings that drive extension at the hips, not the lower back. Now, in a video on developing the yoke, I'd be remiss to not mention the neck. I think the neck is possibly the most important muscle for looking more muscular in clothes, And I have a full video explaining neck training techniques in this series if you'd like to check that out. And I also have a neck and trap science explained video outlining more of the research on developing the neck and the upper traps. So if you guys haven't seen those, I'll link both of them in the description box down below. And if you guys are interested in taking your training up a notch, you can check out my website over at jeffnippard.com for all my training programs, including my most popular intermediate to advanced push-pull legs routine. And I'll have that linked down below as well. So guys, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys all here in the next one.